Hello, welcome to CarCast+Edmunds podcast. I'm Matt, the moderator, DeAndrew, here with Alistair Weaver. How are you?
Better than I was last week, Matt. Sorry
Yeah,
everybody for missing a show last week, but I was literally in hospital, but I am 80% recovered, maybe 70%, but I'm here.
I'm glad you're back. Yeah, it's been a little bit of a whirlwind. You had the the trip back home and to your home and your wife's home, and then got sick in the process,
That
and
was Europe, yeah, and then got
yeah,
sick back here, so I don't
it's
know. I don't know.
yeah.
I've never been sick in my life. I've always been like one of those kind of excitable bunnies and suddenly whack. So but I'm okay. I'm okay.
Are you good enough to go to Car Week? Go to Monterey Car Week? Because
Yeah,
that's
I
going to be
just
coming
I just
up.
went to see the doctor for one of those, post-hospital checks, and she's like, okay, what I need you to do, your immune system's shot at the moment because you've just been sick, and you need to stay away from people, stay away from alcohol, stay away from sugar. And I was like, okay. So I've got two kids, both of which are sick, and next week I'm going to Car Week, which is this huge spectacular where basically people throw alcohol at you for
And
four
sugar.
days and sugar, and there's like a million people from all over the world.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, take some vitamin D.
Yeah, good luck. See you. She's like, I'll just see you back here in a week then.
Just book me in.
Yeah, should we just go ahead and schedule that now for the following Monday? Just
I
come
was like,
back
yeah,
in.
it's kind of hard to navigate around that. And then I came back here and we're prepping for the show, and I was reading through my schedule for the week, and it's like, you have a little event here, and then you got an event here, and then you got an event here, and this is a Lamborghini cocktail reception, and you really want to go to that. So I was like, okay. So I'm gonna rely on the antibiotics,
Yeah, power through. Get
and he said
all.
no. The other thing was like no stress. I like organizing your life so you have no stress. I'm
Yeah,
not going to look after kids tonight. I'm not going to clean the house. I'm going to have no stress.
no stress. That would still bother me. I'd be up
That's
all
not.
night
That's
thinking
going to
about it.
create more stress.
Yeah, that's what happens. That's what happens to me, at least. All right, so before we get into this, let's talk about Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. And right now, you can receive a 50% free bet up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from Olympics to baseball to Formula One racing. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. And when the game's over, head on over to their online casino to get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with over 150 different slot games. Head to the website to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, so we were talking a little bit about Monterey Car Week, kind of leading up to Car Week. We were touching on in the past couple of weeks some of the kind of interesting debuts. It just seems like every year or two, another supercar, whatever hypercar company pops up out of nowhere, and not that they're bad. Like I a couple of years ago, I saw Zinger and I was like, oh, this is kind of, you sit in the middle. It's got a lot of 3D printed stuff. They're kind of doing their own engine. It's like, I don't know if we need this car company, but it is kind of a cool piece. And then, whatever, a couple of months ago, we interviewed the guys. I'm like, they're doing some really cool stuff. And they set the record at the hill climb for a production gas powered vehicle at Goodwood with that car. I don't know if you saw the video, but they clipped the mirror off on the right at the end. They that Zinger has this big mirrors off to the side, and they were so close. I don't know if it was the flint wall or something else, but that whatever, probably a $5,000 carbon fiber mirror just went right off the side of that thing, and they set the record. Yeah, it was interesting.
It's a funny story about that. I once had a 599 Ferrari, and an ex's mother. I basically had to ring. It's a long time ago, and I said, "Okay, I need to borrow your garage because I'm not allowed for insurance reasons to park it on the street." This is when I was living in London. Okay, no problem. And this thing was so wide that it basically didn't fit in the garage. And I was
Yeah.
reversing it out and she's trying to tell me, stop, stop. And she put a finger between the mirror and the garage door to basically protect the mirror. I broke a finger. It's not funny, really. And then it broke the mirror as well. And
So
Ferrari were going to send me like an £800 bill for the mirror. And I was like, it's a hairline crack. And come on, guys, it's not $800 to you. And in the end, everything kind of like went away. But it was like a real eye opener that with this, anything like this, I mean, this is going back probably like 20 years. And it
yeah.
was £800 then. Like, what's that, like $1,100? But that's the problem with any of these cars. Like any little detail is just going to be like a big check. But anyway, sorry, we diverse, but it was a
Yeah.
nice story.
It seems like nobody cared about the finger.
No, that's easier to fix, isn't it?
Yeah, that one you could just tape it up, I guess. It's
Yeah.
far less expensive, I think, to fix the finger. Um, anyway, one of the new supercars that's coming up there is I think it's Nilu. I think that's how you say it, Nilu.
Nilu,
Yeah,
which is not only is it difficult name of a company, it's also a difficult name the guy behind it, Sasha Selipanov. Um, and this is another crazy hypercar. Now, the cool thing, if people haven't been to Car Week, it's like we will be the poorest people there by a factor of like 1,000.
yeah,
I remember speaking to somebody there the first time I ever went, and I was a bit kind of wide-eyed as, fresh off the boat. And I was talking to somebody from a private jet, I think it was Leah, and he was telling me that 80% of people there either have a private jet, have access to a private jet, or basically know someone who does.
yeah.
And he said, even in the Middle East, this is the biggest concentration of wealth that you will basically find anywhere. And that's why all these people turn up with these, like, here's another $5 million, $4 million, $3 million hypercar from a company that you've never heard of. But you're right. Like, at what point does the market become saturated for $5 million cars from companies that you've never heard of? But I mean, Sasha Selipanov is responsible for designing the Bugatti Chiron,
Yeah.
and he's
And the
now,
Koenigsegg Gemera.
yeah, and now has done his own, and it looks. We've got it on the screen if you're on YouTube. It looks really pretty. And there was a period a couple of years ago where everything that came out was electric because it was, it's easier to do an electric car in some respects. Now that's not the case. This is this is not electric. This is
No, this
gas.
is an example of him using the most amount of technology to design and engineer an analog car. It's, he's just using the latest in CAD and engineering and 3D printing on the exhaust to make a car that's as analog as a supercar can be these days. They have a bespoke 12-cylinder engine, looks like a manual gearbox. Like, it just looks insane. Now, what you're seeing on the screen is the track only version of the car, which I think they're making 15 of. And
Yes.
then there's going to be a production version later that they'll make a few more. I don't think a lot. I don't know if it's, I forgot what the number is. I don't know if it's like 25 or 50 or something like that.
54. 54 street legal versions, 1,070 horsepower, revving to 12,000 RPM, naturally
Wow.
aspirated 6.5 litre V12, built in partnership with New Zealand-based Hartley engines. It's apparently inspired by like the 80s and 90s Formula One cars for the engine. Presumably that was that would be the post-turbo era. But then the exterior, there's a bit of kind of Lamborghini Countach going on. If you look at like the little air intake on the side, that looks
Yeah.
like a little sort of 70s homage. It's a cool looking thing. I mean, it's another one of those things where you're like, okay, what's the point? But I don't know. Like, I grew up looking at stuff like this, and people buy me books on this kind of thing for Christmas, and I guess that's why I'm here today. So good luck to them. But I just hope that, I mean, if you go up to Car Week, it's the only time of the year, even if you live in LA and you occasionally find yourself in Beverly Hills, it's the only time of the year where you actually see any of these cars like for real.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind of where people, like, I was going to say dust down, but they don't, because you have a fleet of people looking after them, don't you? But it's like the only time where people probably drive them anywhere. So it's I don't know. Good luck to them. Good luck to them. It looks cool. There's
It
a lot
looks
of passion
cool.
gone
It's
into
a
it.
cool piece. It's going to be amazing to hear. I know they're sort of just debuting it there, but if they really want to get some attention, they should bring it out to the track on Sunday, because the track on Sunday now is they get a bunch of the, it's kind of like a Goodwood hill climb now. They run the track backwards, I think. And they do a
Laguna
hill
Seca
climb.
backwards. Is that even safe? Yeah.
Yeah, so they run it as like a hill climb, and they bring out like the supercars. So the uh like the Zinger will be out there, and whatever the latest McLaren is, and uh I don't know, I'm drawing the blank on the Porsche guy that's out here that does the crazy over the top carbon fiber. Gunther Works, sorry.
Gunther
Yeah,
Works. I was going to
yeah,
say,
I
yeah,
say
the
Porsche, and I'm
993,
sure,
993 base car. Yeah.
yeah, running that car. They should bring this thing out because people will want to hear it. They
Yeah.
want to hear an 11,000 RPM, 6.5 liter, 12 cylinder.
It reminds me a bit of the Gordon Murray car. The fan car was the T50, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's
So and that's probably a car that Dario will have out to run, because they had it at the track last year as well. So when you
Dario
hear that,
Franchitti. Yeah.
yeah,
It's if I was like a squillionaire, and let's face it, unless I win the lottery, I think the odds on that are probably over for me now. Um, if if I was a squillionaire, I think the Gordon Murray car is I haven't driven it yet, but I think of all of the cars, that's probably the one
yeah.
that I would lean to,
I
just because the heritage, the story behind the guy, but just the sound and the engineering and the purity of it. It is as close as you can get to like a modern McLaren F1. I just think it's such a cool car.
I agree 100%. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to sit down with both Dario and Gordon Murray the past couple of years at Monterey and talk about that car as it was coming to fruition, just talking about the engineering, how it compared to the McLaren F1 to what it is now. And the conversation alone, when you hear Gordon Murray talk about it and what he's done with that car, it's the biggest selling point of that car is you just hear what he's done and you're like, I'm in.
The
I
only
just
thing
need a
about
couple
it,
couple million bucks.
the only thing about it, yeah, and the rest, the only thing about it is like it doesn't. I don't think it photographs well because it's got these kind of big bug eye front
Yeah.
lights going on, but in real life it looks fantastic. It's just one of those cars that the photos don't really do it justice. So that's super cool. Always excited to see that. Pagani's back with the Utopia Roadster.
Yeah.
Pagani's, I don't know, like Pagani. I love the Zonda. The original Zonda is very, very pure design, and I think with so many of these designs now, and in some ways, the Nilu is actually quite nice because although it's quite simple, as is the Gordon Murray T50.
Yeah.
Pagani's
We're looking at
design
the
has
Gordon
got,
Murray car right now. And
yeah,
right, like a little plane coming just looking off the front end.
yeah, it's not, and maybe that's a nice thing. Maybe I'm almost like contradicting myself. I guess you're so used to seeing the aesthetic of the McLaren F1, and in many ways, the T50 is kind of a successor to the F1. So I think your brain is used to seeing an F1, and this kind of looks like a sort of curious take on an F1. But when you compare it to something like the Pagani, it's beautifully simple, and a lot of the aero is relying on this fan on the back, and a lot of the clever work underneath, and everything else. Like Pagani has gone from something which was really simple and pure and looked like a Group C race car to something that now is so sort of complex and elaborate, and it's like like you get. I mean, I'm a big watch buff as well, and I love like really simple watches like Panerais and some of the simple IWC Pilots watches, things like that. And then you get the really high-end watches, which are so complex, and there's diamonds everywhere, and this
Yeah.
and that and everything else. And I kind of feel like a lot of these hypercars have gone the same way. There's just so much design going on. There's like scoops and whoops and curves and stuff everywhere, and I just think you lose some of the beauty. I know Ian Callum's a mutual friend of ours who designed well, pretty much most of the recent Jaguars and Astons before that, and he says the same thing. There's just like the purity of design is lacking, the kind of elegance, and
Yeah.
there's a lot going on with the Paganis these days.
There is, but it's probably Pagani's way of trying to keep up with the super high tech, like the Nilu and the Zingers and of the world, going, what else can we do? We need to push the boundaries of what they've been doing with the design and stuff. And this car that you're talking about specifically, he's like, this is going to be one with the manual transmission because you get to machine a 90-pound piece of billet aluminum down to 4 pounds and recycle the rest and go, hey, this has got a $50,000 shifter in it. Something that very few car companies can ever do. Only a handful like Pagani would be able to make something like that work.
I mean, I love all that stuff.
I do
There
too.
was a great. A lot of people say, well, it's vulgar, and I can understand that argument. I can understand people saying, look, this is vulgar. Somebody's spending, like $1 million on a gear stick, and I get that argument. But then I also recognize that it's not like there's $1 million of profit there for Pagani. There's a lot of people and a lot of labor that's actually gone into creating that gear stick. There is actually, a lot of people employed and a lot of people
Yeah.
putting bread on the table to do that. And I remember like an analysis of of a one-off Ferrari once, and it was that whole argument about like how many people has this fed this this $10 million Ferrari, and then somebody did like a breakdown of everybody involved in this project, from Michelin doing the tires to Brembo doing the brakes, and like how many people had actually worked on this, touched this project, and been paid for this project. So I don't always buy into that argument. There are definitely bits of Car Week, and I think Quail on Friday can feel a bit vulgar at times. It's very kind of like, can you see this is Dolce Gabbana? It's a bit like that.
Yeah,
It's
that's before we even get into ticket prices, because ticket prices over the years went from something like $900 to $2,200.
But I don't think anybody going really pays. Like, how many people actually go and buy a ticket?
Oh,
Probably not many.
I think it's sold out every year. I think all the tickets that they make available. You're right. When you take out the vendors, right? You take out the manufacturers that are at a booth, and they get a certain amount of allotment, I guess, for their staff and maybe a few guests, and some of the vendors do, and then the cars that are shown there. But yeah, there's a certain amount of tickets that get sold, it and it's a lottery system. So you basically go, hey, I'm going to apply to spend $2,200 on a ticket per person, and then if I'm lucky enough to be chosen, then we get to go and check out these cars and eat
You
cheese
get a
and
free
drink
lunch,
wine.
though. You get a free lunch and a glass of rosé for that. But this is
Yeah.
this has always been the kind of weird thing about my this sort of media existence. We used to have this expression in the UK about kind of paupers living like princes,
Yeah.
and particularly when you start. I remember starting out in this industry, and I think I was earning like $15,000 a year or something. It's not that long ago. And I'd have like a kind of silly car outside. I couldn't barely afford to
No,
leave.
no, it's totally, because we it's not, I mean, we joke about it, but the reality is because, because we've been doing this for a little while. But yes, I mean, certainly before like YouTube and stuff, a real automotive journalist, which I never really considered myself in that category, more of automotive entertainment, but certainly what you've been doing for so long, it's a wildly underpaid but fun of career to have. And then people ask all the time, I go, oh, there's going to be an event downtown. They're going to debut a new supercar. They're like, is there going to be any food there? I go, well, media is not going to go if there's not. Like, that's the truth. Is like, if there's not some free tacos or something going on, then no one's going to show
Do,
up. Like,
do you know what? When we have a slow week, which I know we haven't had recently, we should talk about like what life was like when I started out. I know we touched a bit about my career, but some of the stories about like bad behavior. I mean, people have written books about stuff, but this is probably pre 2008 killed a lot of this off. But pre 2008, there was a lot of really bad behavior associated with kind of like certain members of the kind of motoring press.
yeah,
Um,
I would imagine there are.
there
And
are
that's
some
not just
fantastic stories.
wrecking a few cars. That's different. But
Oh no, this is people taking their drapes to vehicle launches so they can get them washed by the hotel. It's people siphoning fuel out into Coke bottles. It's all sorts. Somebody was using. There's much better stories than this, some of which aren't even repeatable on air. But I remember one guy was caught using a press car, because you get like a press car for a week or 2 weeks,
yeah.
and it arrives clean, full of fuel. Somebody was using it as a mini cab because they realized obviously there's no overhead. So there's all sorts of stuff going on. Anyway, basically, Monterey has has an element of this, but it is an amazing event, and I think just to just to see that kind of world and that kind of celebration of the automobile. And it changes, doesn't it? It changes character, because like Friday you go to Quail and it's all about the latest, newest, fanciest thing, and basically how much money can you blow on something. And then Saturday is all about like old school racing, which is amazing at Laguna Seca.
Yeah.
And then Sunday is like proper old school money. All the old cars come out, and it's all, and that's the Pebble Beach and the Concours d'Elegance, and that's a very, very different feel. So that's always what like kind of like appeals to me is, Friday is this kind of insight into this kind of slightly nouveau world of the hyper rich. Then Saturday is like real money going around in old school races, and
Yeah.
then Sunday is this kind of, you almost have to change your outfit every day. Sunday is like dressing. I mean, I get clothes out for this weekend that I would never wear under any circumstances the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Like I have like my, like,
No,
you know
no,
what it's like in LA.
there's
You like live in t-shirt and shorts and jeans, and and then I'm like, oh, I better get my posh pants out.
there's the two or three things or whatever, four things hanging in my closet with the plastic bag over on the, that's just car week.
Yeah.
Just go, it's just car week.
I have
But
a blue Gucci suit that I bought at an outlet center many years ago. Yeah, like it gets dusted down, out it comes.
I gotta double check, make sure all that stuff still fits. Probably getting a little too late, getting too close to Monterey to make sure it all fits.
Dude, I lost 12 pounds last week with being ill. Like I'm
Just
pretty sure everything's not gonna fit. What
uh,
else we got? We
but
got M5 to M. I'm just going down my little list. There's a few things that I
yeah,
can't talk about. I mean, that's the only other thing that we should talk about is like this thing used to just be like a show off weekend, but because, and I think this is linked to the death of or the near demise of the auto show, Car Week has now become much more mainstream in terms of launching vehicles. So we know that like M5 Touring is going to be there. We know that Lamborghini is going to, okay, not exactly an everyday car, but Lamborghini is going to do the Huracan successor there, which I think will be hybrid and a V8. So we are, there's normally a bunch of other people who are more mainstream brands that are now using this as an opportunity. Mercedes, Ford did something last year, Lincoln's,
yeah.
etc. Using this as an opportunity to communicate the audience about their new car. So it's changing a little bit. There is a bit more kind of mainstream appeal to it.
Well, as we were saying, as the auto shows have sort of lost some pizzazz, and attendance along with that, the car companies are finding other events like Car Week to be the place to launch it, to launch their cars, like you said, like Lincoln and BMW. um I want to get into one other thing real quick that's a little less Monterey Car Week, but let's just take a quick break. We'll be right back. Okay, so this came up recently on Dodge Charger EV. Dodge Charger EV prices are being announced, and I think you guys got a hold of the details on it. First and
Yeah, I think
foremost, expensive.
stuff started leaking, didn't it? And then suddenly they said, okay. Yeah, I mean, we always thought it was going to be expensive, and let's face it, nearly all EVs are expensive. But
But starting
yeah,
at
what's this?
almost $62,000, and
Yeah,
then on the high end, the Scat Pack starts at 75,000, and I think you can load it up to about 81,000 bucks. Like, so 61,000 to $81,000 for this car. This is going to be a tough pill to swallow. I mean,
yes,
you do get
because that
670 horsepower on that Scat Pack version.
yeah, but I mean, sounds silly, but in the world of EVs, that's a lot, but it's not like, oh my God, I've never heard of a car with that before. It's yeah, if you think about, that's only in line with something like Hyundai Ioniq 5N, which is also 70 grand to be fair. Um, yeah, I mean, the starting price 62, that's in line with something like a Genesis GV60. It's more than something like a Hyundai Ioniq 5. You'd get a Mach-E GT for that money. Admittedly, different kind of look and feel of car. The Mach-E's, obviously more of kind of an SUV vibe going on. 456 horsepower sounds like a lot, but in a heavy EV isn't that much. You know, 0 to 60, they're saying 4.7. Again, like 10 years ago, I would have said that's fast. Not so much these days. You're going to think that you're going to get something like a Model 3 Performance for probably less money than that, which is going to be
Yeah.
a hell of a lot faster.
It's interesting though, because you're quoting some prices and you're quoting prices of all the other competitive EVs. And I didn't even really think that much about it. I was thinking more like, this is still supposed to be a pony car. This is a muscle car to them. And I'm looking at like, what does a Mustang cost? Or now that Camaro's ended, but what are the Camaro costs? And certainly comparing it to itself, how much was a Dodge Charger and a Dodge Challenger? And it seems like such a huge jump
It's a
in
good
price.
15 grand. Yeah, there's a good sort of 15
Yeah.
grand uptick, isn't there? Depending on model for model. I mean, just looking at the spec, 100.5 kilowatt hour battery, that's where the money is, right? That's
Yeah.
something like a Tesla Model 3, I think is still around 70 kilowatt hours. So, you know, you've got another 30 on top of that. So that's where the money is. Um, I mean,
Yeah,
everybody.
I think they're going to have a hard time converting their audience, because the audience already is like, well, the performance numbers are there, but it's EV and I like the sound of my Dodge Challenger. And then you go to them and go, but it's still a muscle car. We promise you we're Dodge. We know we're doing muscle cars. And then go, well, we're going to start at $15,000 extra money. So get prepared for that too. I think
Because
it's,
there's also going to do the inline six, aren't they? But I'm just
yeah.
I
And
don't
I
think
don't
we
know where that's going to start, but
no, which presumably would have to be cheaper than that, right? And this is where you
yeah.
just get this is where you just start twisting yourselves up in knots, because if it's significantly cheaper than the EV, and we've talked about this so many times, there's a problem with EVs, right? Isn't it? You're asking for somebody to pay more for something which has, at the moment, perceived at least to have more well, no, it does have more compromises than an ICE car. Especially as looking at that, it hasn't got like tons and tons of performance. Yeah, maybe the 670 car, the Scatback car is, but then that's getting into the 70 grand. You know, so 630. You know, so it's, but again, what does it weigh? 100 kilowatt hour battery is heavy.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, you know, it's probably, this thing could easily be getting on for £5,000. I mean, it looks cool. It's difficult because this was kind of supposed to be the EV for people who don't really like EVs. But I mean,
Well, the
what's the
pricing is going to be
audience?
interesting, like you said. But what is the six-cylinder price going to come in? Is that going to come in like the Mustang pricing? What is the EcoBoost is about $32,000, and Dark Horse starts at about
And then you got to wonder
$61,000. So you
who's going
know,
to buy the EV. I mean, somebody like me actually really fancies the idea of like an EV, you know, like an EV charger. I just think it's somebody like me. I think that's like, but I'm a pretty niche audience,
yeah,
and I can't imagine probably going to my wife saying we're going to swap the Genesis GV60 for a Dodge Charger.
yeah.
You know, I
And,
just
we're really running out of
in
Fast and Furious movies, so I'm not sure what their marketing strategy is going to be.
in orange. Like we're gonna have one of these in orange, and we're gonna pay 75 grand. I just,
But it will make
yeah.
very loud fake engine noises through its external speaker system.
I think it depends also how good it is. Like this Ionic 5N, I think is rewriting the rule book at the moment, and we haven't driven the Model 3 Performance yet, the Tesla, but that Ionic 5N is such a good car, and we've just done the two U-Drag races with it. So anybody checks out the YouTube channel, it's a really amazing piece of kit. It's really exciting. It's really different. It sounds great. It's got all this like trick technology that makes you think it's a gas car. And, you know, I'd have one in a heartbeat. And I just hope that Dodges, because like it's not a muscle car in as much that they're all muscle cars.
Yeah.
Like pretty much every EV is a muscle car in terms of like loads of performance. So you gotta hope.
Performance wide, yes, but you miss sort of the rawness of it, the sound of it, the feel, and certainly the
Yeah.
manual transmission that's available on a lot of them, not all of them, but many.
So, so you've got to hope that it handles and has something about it that gives you that kind of
Well, if it's got a
feeling.
100 kilowatt battery, it's going to be heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, but then he was always heavy, really,
Yeah, it was always
relatively
kind of heavy.
speaking.
Yeah. Now, you did mention the BMW M5, and I guess the touring version is going to be up at Monterey. What but yeah, the wagon. It seems like this is becoming kind of popular again. Is Audi just reaping all the benefits with with the Avant, with the
With the
RS6 Avant and
RS6.
stuff?
Yeah.
Are they just selling enough now that it's getting the attention of the other car companies? Because it wasn't that long ago you would talk to them and go, "We love the wagon, but it doesn't sell in America." Is it selling now? That's
I mean, it's like it's a niche within a niche within a niche, isn't it? Really, it's I mean, obviously, like no car company brings a vehicle to market not having done its research. At least not a company like BMW. So they're either using it as a halo product to try and sell sedan M5 or other vehicles in the range, or
yeah,
but the days when people would do that are kind of over. It needs to have a business model of its own. So they've obviously looked at what Audi's sales. They've talked to their customer base and they've said, yeah, actually there is an appetite for this, and we think we can sell enough to justify bringing it in. I mean, this, unlike the Audi, this is a plug-in hybrid. So was it 700 plus horsepower plug-in hybrid, whereas the Audi is not.
yeah,
And then we also think Mercedes is going to bring in an AMG E63 wagon as well. So you're going to have basically the big three Germans duking it out in this kind of wagon war as to like how many people they can actually sell them to. I worry there's always this thing about like journalist cars that we take to sit and talk about on this show and be like, oh, look, everybody should buy a fast wagon.
yeah,
And then what happens is everybody goes, but then I go skiing, or occasionally I go like, go to see this, and we go, oh no, I better buy an SUV. And I
yeah.
hope that there's that sort of mentality. It's it will be very interesting to see how this does. I mean, there'll be an initial niche of people who just want it because it's cool. And again, like I could imagine myself getting one because they're really cool, but it's also 150 grand, and I don't
Right.
have
But you
150
guys are
grand to
chomping
spend.
at the bit to get an RS6 against an M5 touring, right? You just want to drag race. You want to do U drags
Oh,
with the two
oh,
wagons more than anything for this. You can
yeah,
imagine right now, right? It's just like, yeah, we just want to drag race the wagons. You should do it with four people in the car.
we should. But can we borrow one of your dogs? Put
or
it in the
just
truck.
or just put the car seats in the back as
Yeah.
well, just to make the point of
Honestly, my kids would be so up for that. My wife might have palpitations, but I think the kids would be up for it.
yeah. Anyway,
But
it's an interesting car that I think would. I'm looking forward to seeing it at Monterey if they have it up there. I
yeah,
imagine they
it's a
will.
very cool thing. I mean, there's been so much criticism of the M5 for how big and heavy it is. Well, how heavy it is in particular, and the wagon's not going to be any lighter. But
Yeah.
it's a cool
But the
thing.
numbers are going to be there. Like you said, 738 horsepower, 738 pound-feet of torque, probably 0 to 60 around the 3 second mark, maybe
Uh,
less with all-wheel drive and
I
electrification.
I mean, it's curious, isn't it? Like we've been talking a long time, like to go big performance, you need EV. But actually now everybody, look at like what Chevy's just done with the Vet, 1,000 plus horsepower. People are now really turning up the wick on the internal combustion stuff as well. And I know
Yeah.
this is hybrid, but we're
And
not
that
seeing.
car's rear-wheel drive, so good luck. You
Yeah,
know.
good luck with that. I mean, next 911 Turbo is probably going to be hybrid. I think it's going to have to be because the GTS is hybrid. So, it's yeah, it's just what we talked about in the show there, in the before. It's like it just gets heavier and heavier.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if the performance numbers are there, we'll see. But I think a lot of I think there's gonna be less judgment on a hybrid M5 than there's gonna be on a Dodge Charger EV, especially at that price point. That's gonna get a lot of discussion.
Y-
Now,
Yeah,
are you guys gonna get one?
we are looking at buying one. Yeah, it's supposed to be top secret, but what the hell? We're yeah, we are looking at buying a Charger EV
I
just because
mean,
it's.
look, I think it's worth talking about. I think it's probably something you guys should consider getting because um
But you're right. Then the
yeah,
gets question, at what level? Because the entry level car feels a bit. So probably you want the Scat Pack, but then it's like another 70 odd. 70 grand. And okay, you might get the tax break as but then probably they're going to have very aggressive lease deals on it with the tax break built into it.
yeah.
But it's such a lot of money, Matt, isn't it? It's such a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, but in theory, it's like we were talking about, it's like we don't really know what category to put it in. Are we going to put it all up against the EVs like Mustang Mach-E and Ioniq 5N, or are we
I
going to put
think
it
you
up
have to. I
against
mean,
muscle cars? Or are you going to do both? Like,
I think you
I,
kind of probably do a bit of both. But I mean, if you were looking at it on paper, we would, we sort of sit down and we analyze like price point, performance point. You're going to be looking at this. You're going to be saying it's Tesla Model 3 Performance, Hyundai Ioniq 5N, Genesis has that GV60 Magma thing coming out, which will be similar performance and very extrovert in its styling. It kind of lines up with them as rivals.
yeah,
But then you're right. Do you also put it against M3, which is
yeah.
same money? I mean, the whole point of the Charger was that you were getting like M3 performance for, 60% of the wedge.
I
And now it's as expensive as a, yeah, 70 grand gets you. 70 grand get you an M3 nearly. Certainly gets you a good M2.
I would definitely like to hear from the listeners of this podcast. Are you guys down with an EV charger, or is that a big no-no?
And are you down with one
I'm
for
not
seven?
saying EVs in general. Like, you may
Yeah.
like EVs, you may not like EVs. So you're either in on them or you're not, or maybe you're starting to warm up to it because we're starting to use electrification for performance and we're seeing some pretty cool results in that regard. But are we ready to make the shift from gas engine muscle car to electric muscle car?
And at the moment, it's something with a two-door hatch with the sedan and the electric sedan, the gas car coupe and sedan entering production the following year. So, I mean, that probably makes sense to give the EV its moment in the sun. So you're going to have the first year is going to be basically the coupe. So 60, 61 and a half, 75. So basically, like, call that 80 probably by the time you've got it, a couple of bits and bobs on it, 75, 80. Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting times. You're a Dodge dealer. You got to be thinking who's like, apart from Goldberg, who you selling this to?
Yeah, and I'm not even sure he's getting one, so we'll find out. But listen, Mustang Mach-E is doing well for Ford, and a lot of people hated that it's a Mustang, and a lot of people still hate that it's called a Mustang. But when you take it out of the muscle car realm, because it's an SUV as well, and you're just like, this is sort of Ford's, dynamic electric SUV, regardless of name, it's doing pretty well for them.
Yeah, it's doing okay. They've got pretty aggressive deals on it at the moment, but yeah, I mean, it looks cool. It really looks cool. It's just like, where's the brand? Because you just think of the brand as being, it's always been about like more horsepower for your dollar, basically
Yeah.
horsepower per dollar ratio, hasn't it? That's what it's always been. So yeah, interesting times. Interesting times.
All right. I mean, if Dom Toretto drives one, then I'm in. I'm in
Yeah,
for
like
whatever
how much
Dom
they're gonna
Toretto
have to
does.
pay how much they're gonna pay for that. You gotta feel that's gotta be in Fast 11 or whatever it is. What are we up to? 10? No, 11.
Well, 10
Fast
part
11.
two. So 10 and a
10
half.
part 2.
Yeah. I don't think it's making it in there.
Yeah,
If it
Toretto.
makes it in there, then they just paid $10
Yeah,
million. They just funded a big chunk of the
they've got
money.
it
And
right. I
right.
mean,
Like
living my life a quarter of a mile at a time because I'll run out of charge.
yeah, until, until you run out of
I
charge.
just thought of that one. I'm quite pleased with that line.
All right. I think we're gonna wrap things up. You got to get to bed. You got to take a nap. You got a couple more days of sleeping before you hit car week.
Yeah, I will see you there. We can have stand by for some pictures next week of us
Are you
dressed absurdly.
are you just driving up yourself? Or are you bringing the family? Like, what's the
Uh,
plan?
no, I'm working, so I'm driving up. I'm driving up myself. I'm probably going to take the classic car up there and give it a good run. And
Okay.
so yeah,
Yeah, always up for a challenge, I guess.
I'm a guest of Lincoln for the
I mean,
weekend.
why
So
take a super reliable car from the fleet that you have, but you could just take
it's a Porsche 993. It's all right. It's
it's all
pretty
right.
reliable. It's just been serviced. I have every faith in Hank,
That's
named
okay.
after the Californication character.
Yeah. Okay. Um, all right. Yeah. Listen, we'll see you up there, and hope you.
I could always call you if things go pear shaped.
Yeah, we'll wait for
Swing
you on
by
the
and pick
way.
me up. Yeah.
We got an extra seat in the car or something. You'll be fine. All right.
Certainly.
Thanks, guys. Until next time, keep the air in the spare and the bag in the wheel.